On March 31, 1922, 6 people entered a remote Bavarian farmhouse. None of them left alive, and the killer's identity remains sealed in that house's walls. The file opens on a routine police dispatch. March 31, 1922, Wernersberg, Bavaria, a small community in the foothills, mostly farmland and forest. The Hinterkaifeck farm sits isolated roughly 4 kilometers from the nearest neighbor. That distance matters. It always does in cases like this. On that date, the Gruber family, Andreas Gruber, age 63, his wife Kazilia, 72, their widowed daughter Victoria and her 2 children, Kazilia and Joseph, ages 8 and 7, all stopped existing in the world's view. Not gradually, completely. One day they were there. The next, they were gone. Exhibit 1, the preliminary statement. The record shows that neighbors reported seeing the Grubers in town on March 30th. Routine errands. Andreas purchased groceries. Nothing suggested crisis. But by April 4th, when a neighbor finally checked the property, the farmhouse was silent. Exhibit 2, what the police found inside. The record documents 6 bodies in various rooms. Andreas lay in the bedroom, face down in blood. Kazilia, his wife, was found in a storage area, partially hidden. Victoria and the 2 children were discovered in the attic. The evidence suggests blunt force trauma, though the exact sequence remains unclear. Exhibit 3, and this is where the case fractures into something stranger. The autopsies revealed that some bodies had been dead for days before others. Andreas showed signs of decomposition consistent with death around March 31st. But Victoria and the children? The record indicates they died later, perhaps days later, perhaps while someone still occupied the house. This matters. This means that after killing the patriarch, someone remained in that farmhouse, with corpses, with the children. The record doesn't specify whether the children were killed first or last, only that there was a window, a gap in time, when a killer lived alongside the dead. Exhibit 4, the evidence of an unseen observer. Before the murders, neighbors reported something unsettling. Footprints. Fresh tracks in the snow surrounding the farmhouse, but no clear source. Tracks that appeared and disappeared. The record notes that locals spoke of something watching the property. A presence. Not a person, a presence. After the bodies were discovered, investigators found something else. The farmhouse doors were locked from the inside, but there was evidence of forced entry, scratches around the locks, wood splintered near the frame. The record raises a question it never answers. Did someone lock the family in, or lock the killer out only to have him return? Exhibit 5, the suspect who vanished. A man named Lawrence Schlittenbauer was a neighbor and a suspect. The record shows he had financial disputes with Andreas Gruber, but more than that, Schlittenbauer was seen near the farm multiple times in the weeks before the murders. Locals remembered him. Yet when questioned, he claimed he'd never been to Hinterkaifeck. The record documents his story crumbling. But here's the fracture in the case. Schlittenbauer was never charged. The record shows insufficient physical evidence. No fingerprints. Forensics in 1922 were primitive. No witnesses to the actual murders. He died in 1952, his guilt or innocence still unresolved. The file stays open. Exhibit 6, the alternative theory. The record also documents another possibility, one that some investigators favored. Andreas Gruber had been having an affair with a younger woman. Kazilia discovered it. Arguments escalated. One account, preserved in police notes, suggests a violent domestic confrontation. But if that's true, the timeline still doesn't fit. Because the children were killed, multiple days after the initial attack. No crime of passion spans that arc. The record shows something colder, something methodical. Someone stayed in that house. Someone waited. Someone made a choice to end the children's lives after they'd already lost their mother and grandfather. Exhibit 7, the sealed questions. The investigative file closes with notations that remain puzzling. The phrase evidence of prior disturbance appears multiple times without explanation. The record mentions behavioral indicators suggesting known perpetrator, but names none. It's as if someone in authority knew something and chose not to document it fully. One neighbor's statement survived. She recalled seeing smoke from the chimney for days after the family vanished. The record notes this. Someone was maintaining the fire. Someone was keeping the house warm. Someone was there in that isolated farmhouse with 6 corpses as if waiting for something. The official investigation concluded in 1923 with no arrests, no charges, no resolution. The case was classified. The records were filed. Hinterkaifeck returned to silence. But the silence, the record shows, was never quiet. Locals avoided the property. Stories persisted. A family had been erased, and the eraser was never found. What we know, 6 people died. The timeline is fractured. The suspect's guilt is unproven. The motive remains obscured by nearly a century of silence. What we don't know fills the spaces between the facts, and those spaces are where the real story lies. The Hinterkaifeck murders remain unsolved. The file is closed, but the case refuses to stay buried. It reminds us that some crimes aren't solved because someone chose not to solve them. And sometimes, the most dangerous thing isn't the killer we know, it's the one we never catch. Subscribe for weekly deep dives into cases where the official story doesn't hold, and the real investigation begins where the file ends.